Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, so shall we start?
Sir, 36 doctors have joined so far. So,
Yeah.
would you like to wait, or we should start? I mean, as you tell.
No, by the time we start the lecture, they will add up. In the meantime, I can get feedback from the audience. There are many intelligent doctors over here. I can see the list, so we can have some feedback as to how they will start.
Yeah,
So you
sir,
announce and then I'll address and then we'll ask questions.
Yeah, I'm announcing, just announce. So, good afternoon, all respected doctors. On behalf of JB Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals, I welcome Dr. VT Shah, our esteemed speaker for today. Dr. Shah does not need any interaction. I mean, he's one of the most senior cardiologists and well respected among doctor fraternity and patients in Mumbai and in fact Maharashtra. It's always an honor to hear from him. So, as instructed by Sir, I mean, there is an option of interaction in this webinar format. You just need to raise your hand. Once you raise your hand, I will unmute you and you can put forward your point and talk to doctor directly. And Sir will like to have interactive and question answer type of session, so which will definitely be more productive for all of us. So I request all of you to raise your hand whenever you want to talk, and I will unmute them one by one or multiple way. And at the end of the session, you can also type your question and answer. So I will read out for you to the doctor. So I just hand over to Dr. VT Shah. Welcome, sir.
Yeah. So good evening, all of you, and thanks for joining on this afternoon on Doctor's Day. Especially I thought it appropriate to have this session on Doctor's Day so that we can all interact with each other. And special thanks to all of you, especially the general practitioners who are still going on the field and treating patients day to day. So special thanks to them. And the amount of risk which they are taking. So I really salute them. So now with these words, let us get on to this today's discussion. I would not say lecture or anything because this is a very common topic and everybody has his own experience of how to deal this topic. And we would like to get your feedback so that we know that what are the different ways to tackle the same problem. So now, first of all, let me say that the heading is, how do I manage a blood pressure of 160 by 110? So my question to all of you is, and those who want to opine may please raise their hand and they will be unmuted. If you have a patient coming to you and for the first time and you take the blood pressure reading as 160 by 110, how would you go ahead with this patient? And I would like to get the feedback. Now let us see who raises the hand first. Otherwise, I'll have to call out your names and then ask your opinion. So it's better that you raise your hands and then give your opinion. So let us start with Dr. Vishnu Mulchandani.
Yes, sir. Sir, good afternoon. Happy Doctor's Day.
Thank you very much.
When the patient comes to me with a pressure of 160 by 110, I want to know his family history in brief and whether he's a diabetic or not. And maybe I will record the blood pressure at least thrice before I start the treatment, or maybe I investigate and then start the treatment.
Okay, so that is one opinion. Now, anybody else who would monitor? Who would volunteer, please? Anybody else?
No smoking half an hour prior to the recording. No tea, coffee.
Very good. Very good. And these 3 readings you will take on one day or different days? So rest of you please unmute. Only myself and Dr. Vishnu are talking, and then I'll give opportunities to who else raises his hand. So Dr. Vishnu, now these 3 readings which you are talking, are they on one day or they on 3 different days?
On one day also, maybe on 3 different days also, because I keep white coat hypertension also in mind, office hypertension also in mind.
Very good. And how would you take the blood pressure? Lying down, sitting position, and which BP apparatus would you use? Mercury
Initially-
or electronic?
Sir, initially I always use blood pressure in sitting down,
Okay.
and then maybe standing up to find out whether the patient is having postural hypertension.
Very good. What else? So you said that you will take in sitting position. I asked you a question, what kind of blood pressure instrument would you use? An electronic one, a mercury one, aneroid one?
I use Android one, sir.
You use aneroid one. Okay.
Sir, audio visual.
Audio visual.
Android means I hear and auscultate.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so you use the stethoscope along with
Sir,
that.
sir.
Right. So now let us go to somebody else. Anybody else who has raised the hand, or should I pick up somebody? You don't see anybody, Milan?
Sir, Dr. Usha Parulekar has been unmuted. Then Dr. Shekhar Hemadi, Dr. Chatrala Kothari. So all of
Yes.
them are unmuted.
Okay, fine. So let us go with Dr. Parulekar, please. Can we hear you, madam?
I want to know the age of the patient.
Very good. So age is around 55, 56, 55 of the patient.
I'll take 3 times blood pressure at different times.
Okay.
Different days and different times. Today, if I take in the morning, next time I'll tell him to come in the afternoon or something.
Okay.
And if it is, then I'll get urine examination,
Okay.
serum creatinine,
Yes.
and then I'll think of the proper drug for him.
So, right. So now, unfortunately, I mean, you didn't ask me male or female, but let us assume this is a male patient who has come, and Dr. Vishnu Mulchandani already said that he would like to know the history of diabetes in this patient. 3 different readings. You also said so. And he also, possibly you also mentioned about knowing the serum creatinine level and the urine levels, right? Did you say that? Usha madam?
I'm not expert in this.
Yeah. Usha
Yes,
madam,
sir.
you said urine and serum creatinine, right?
Minimum.
Minimum. Otherwise, if you are given the liberty,
There are so many investigations.
yeah, if you are given so many.
Because high blood pressure means you have to take all those things from ECG all onwards.
But there are 2 things to that, you know. One is whether you want to find out the cause or whether you want to find out the effect.
Both.
Right. But what is your primary concern when the patient comes to you on the first time?
Please lower his blood pressure. It is so high. But
Agree.
slowly.
Yes.
If it is,
But
if
you would also like to find out the cause of it also, right? I
Yes.
mean, why
Lifestyle.
yes, sir.
His lifestyle.
his
Yes, sir.
lifestyle, okay, that is one. So let us go to somebody else now. And who else is there, you said?
Dr. Chatrala Kothari.
Yeah, please. So unmute him and let us hear
I have
from him.
unmuted, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Kothari, please let me know your opinion. Anything else you want to add? Dr. Kothari, can you hear us? Can you unmute yourself and then talk? I see you here muted still.
Yes, हाँ, yes. Hello, I am Dr.
Yeah.
Kothari.
Yes,
मैं
sir.
जब भी पेशेंट्स को लेता हूँ तो उसको पहले रेस्ट करवाता हूँ half an hour. Then I will take 2 times blood pressure with mercury. This mercury, this one blood pressure, and then we will see that what it is. If it is high, then we will see, and we will take 2-3 days for this taking. Okay.
Okay, good. So that is one opinion. Now let us have Dr. Shekhar MRD, please. Can you unmute him, Dr. Shekhar?
Yeah, done, sir. Done.
Hello, sir. Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Sir, for me, this looks like a medical emergency because diastolic beat is 110. So I'm a bit worried about his either what do you call CVS. Huh? So I want to lower his blood pressure by double checking his by sphygmomanometer and in sitting position mainly. And I would like to give either IV Lasix or sublingual calcium channel blocker.
Okay, so we have one opinion about how to tackle this problem, and Dr. Shekhar says that he feels that this could be a medical emergency and he would like to treat the patient aggressively. Good. So now anybody else has raised his hand, or
Yeah, there is one person.
What are patient complaints?
exactly? So that was one important thing that we
So
should know. The
we thought you are starting from the beginning, hypertension and all. Why has the patient come to you?
right. So that is also important. So symptoms of the patient is important.
Very important.
Very important, right? You are right. So let us assume that that is also very important aspect. Now, anybody else who has a different opinion is, do you see anybody else?
This DKC name is not there, but he has. I have unmuted him or her. So
BKC, is that the initial or it is the BKC complex? So Dr. Kishore Madhwani is there. I think, shall we have his opinion?
yeah.
Can you unmute him?
Yes, just a minute, sir. Yeah, I've done, sir.
Yeah, so Dr. Kishore Madhwani, can you unmute yourself and give your opinion?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Tell me, sir, what will be, so now we are telling you, we are giving you this information that patient is asymptomatic. Let us assume he is asymptomatic. If he was breathless and having some chest pain or anything, then that's a different ball game. So we would assume that yes, patient has come to you for a routine checkup. You find his blood pressure 160 by 120, 110, and you look after many of the corporate patients. So if you have an executive coming to you in your office for routine, you find his blood pressure 160 over 110. He has no diabetes history, and this is the first reading you have taken. So what would be the other history you would ask for, and how would you tackle this patient? So let us hear from you.
Can you hear me? Is it possible?
Yeah, you are loud and clear, sir.
Okay. Now, actually, see, we have to get the BP in control. No? We can't leave it like that. So I would definitely like to give medication to the patient. And if he is carrying the medication with him in the office, like he normally takes amlodipine or something, so then I like to give him amlodipine to get the BP down. Okay. So I would prefer giving him that, amlodac or something, 10 milligram immediately, and then monitor the BP after half an hour, whether it's coming down or not. If it's not coming down, then maybe I may give one more tablet. That's what I was thinking. But the fact is, sometimes when the BP is high, we also used to give sublingual nifedipine. Should we give it nowadays or not? Because I still give it. I'm not sure whether it should be given or not. So I would definitely like to give amlodipine to the patient, because that will get the BP down. And if that is not getting it down, then I may have to give something like Lasix. That's what my viewpoint is.
Yeah, good. So we have one opinion now. I see Dr. Pankaj Mehta over there, a very senior general practitioner from Kala Chowki area. So can we hear the opinion of either Dr. Ramila Mehta, his wife, or Dr. Pankaj Mehta?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Dr. Pankaj Mehta, please unmute yourself and let us hear your opinion.
Yeah, can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear. Can you speak a bit louder or come close to the mic?
Okay. Now a little louder. Now I'm audible?
Yeah,
Yes.
you are audible. Tell us, sir.
Yes, sir. Here, it seems the patient is totally asymptomatic. So according to me, there is no hurry to bring down the hypertension at this moment. Then better to go for the proper history, whether he has been hypertensive in the past, whether he has been diabetic in the past, whether he is on certain drugs, or whether what is family history, whether how many hypertensives are there in the family. All these histories are important so that we can come, and as previous speaker said, a minimum 3 readings are necessary at various intervals in order to confirm that the patient is really hypertensive. Whether the patient is consuming coffee, all these points are all necessary. And then better to go for certain investigations and wait for at least few days to see how he is progressing with the lifestyle management, salt restrictions, that. And then there are so many now various drugs are available now, depending upon the various comorbidities we can prescribe either amlodipine or beta blockers or alpha blockers or ACE inhibitors or something of that. But I don't think there is any urgency as far as because you said the patient is totally.
Okay. Yeah. So, good. So we have one more opinion on that. Now, anybody else who has unmuted or raised his hand or something, can you see there?
Dr. Deepak Thakkar, I have unmuted him.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you, sir? Let us
Bas
know your
fine, sir.
opinion. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
See, already Mehta sir had given half of my answer or half of the opinion. Sir, it is not once he had come for regular checkup, so there is no emergency. But by the time we cannot neglect also. So as Mehta sir told, we will see the reason of the cause of the hypertension, and definitely for 3 days we have to check again in the morning and evening or night, consecutive 3 days. And by the time we will look out for the renal profile, lipid profile, and sugar if it is doubtful. And by the time today for that day, same day, we can give tranquilizer and wait and watch. That is my opinion. Then we can go for calcium channel as per your advice.
Okay, good. So I see here Dr. Akhil, contractor, has joined us. Why not take his opinion? He is also a very sharp and smart general practitioner. Dr. Akhil, contractor, please, can you unmute yourself and let us know your opinion?
So yeah, I was listening to Dr. Mehta, and I also feel that there's no emergency. Now, I would like to probably make him sit down for 15-20 minutes. I don't know whether I joined late. Whether you can just make him sit down for 15-20 minutes, again take his BP, and then probably again call him in the evening. And also in the investigation, I think that thyroid should be ruled out first. Thyroid is a quite notorious thing many times, and we can just miss it. Instead of doing a lipid profile and all, that will not coming in the way of hypertension. Basically, we have to really do it a couple of times. And as Mehta also said, I don't think there is emergency. Every day we see patients like that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Akhil, contractor. And now, anybody else who has raised his hand, can you see there?
Dr. K. Talreja is there.
Yeah, okay, please go ahead, Dr. Talreja.
Yeah, Dr. Kamna Talreja here.
Oh, hello, madam. Yeah, tell me.
I just wanted to say that it is an emergency because I've seen a patient above 160 going into hemiplegia. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
160. BP
Yeah,
of
so
167.
yeah, you are right, madam. So sorry about that, but there is a point what you are saying, and let us analyze that also. Okay, now
Can I add something, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Now, see, with all these views keeping in mind, if I'm starting the patient on a medication, I would always start either ARB or ACE inhibitor along with calcium channel blocker. I will give two drugs at one time, depending upon the patient's complaint.
Yeah, good. So
If the patient has come in the morning, if there's some comorbid condition, edema of the legs and all, patient little breathless and all, I can give him a diuretic in the form of hydrochlorothiazide, even that will also add. And if the patient is convinced, maybe tomorrow or day after, we can do ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. That is the final to come to a definite diagnosis.
Okay, very good. So now anybody else do you see, sir, over there?
No, I think, sir.
No. Right. I think we have enough opinions. I can see many other people also are there. But what I would suggest is let us go through these slides and then at the same time I would address some of the opinions when the slides go through. So let us have the slides. Let me see now. Okay. So now I will share screen. Okay. So can we get this, what do we see, this panelist over here? So, and ask somebody to,
Yes, sir.
okay. Can we? So, do you see my slides now?
No, sir. No.
Not yet?
No.
Can you zoom where R1 pachu hai ande click करें नीचे में.
So, can we get, how do we go back from this participants list or something?
Sir, tamare, you can go in the bottom. There will be, you have already opened your slides, right? So go to this share screen button in the down this thing.
Which button? Share screen?
Share screen, yeah, the green color one. You click on that.
But I can't see that box of slide in that just now, which I
Slide must have been closed, sir. So you minimize this zoom. Go back to your slides.
Yeah. Can we unmute that sound, please?
Yeah, I am doing it.
Okay, now can you see my slide now?
No, sir. No.
Not yet?
No. So, sir, once you open the slide, go back to Zoom, click on share screen, and then the box will come where you can see your slide and double click on that. It will show.
Why? So now it happened the first time.
Yeah, we did it. I mean, in first try itself.
Okay. No, this is because I see all the participants over here. Therefore, I minimize this. Okay. First of all, I minimize this.
You minimize.
Then okay. But before minimize, maybe I have to click on the share screen.
Sir, first you open the slide. First you open the slide and then click on the share screen.
Okay. But then the slides are open. That's
slides are open. Now you click on the share screen. Then there will be a box which will have whiteboard and then the.
But that same box is not coming, which was coming earlier. That's the whole thing.
Okay, just.
Can we get this?
Sir,
Okay,
can I ask my colleague to open for your behalf? I mean, he has the backup, so he can open and share.
No, not that. These slides are different. These slides are different than what your company slides are.
Yeah. Okay, no issues.
Yeah. So, so I can see you here, and I can see my slides also.
How are you?
And you still can't see my slides, right?
No, sir.
So, can you see my slides?
No, sir. I'll tell you as soon as it is visible. Uh,
Yes, now I got it.
got
Good.
it.
Yeah, I think it should be now possible.
Now it has started. Now it started, sir.
Now it has started, right?
Yeah, it is started. Now it's visible. Perfect.
Okay, good. So now we have it. Right. So let us go here. 1 second.
Sir, since you want it always interactive, what I have done, I have allowed everyone's mic option open.
Pardon, what have you done? You have?
I have allowed everyone's mic option open, but kept them on mute. So whoever wants to talk can talk directly just by unmuting themselves. So you can make it interactive.
Sure. Yeah. So let us see. Hopefully, what my plan is to just finish these slides, and then we can again come back and discuss some of the points I have noted down, which the audience has said. And so let us now, first of all, go back to this definition or classification of the blood pressure. At what level will you call him stage 1 or 2? Now you see there is a difference of opinion on various guidelines, whether it is American or European. So let me see whether this pointer, okay. So here you have a pre-hypertension base before the 130, 129. So, okay, sorry. Yeah. So you have that now. Stage 1 hypertension according to the new guidelines is 130 to 139 and 80 to 89 of diastole. Right. Now when you go 160 and 100 above, then it is already stage 2 hypertension. So basically when you get this patient and you take their blood pressure, try to see whether it is stage 1 or 2 and then proceed ahead, because now we have a different guideline treatment for stage 1 and 2 or for, no, I can hear some background noise. Can you hear somebody? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
unmuted?
I'll do it immediately.
Yeah, please do that. So, so one is elevated blood pressure. Then you come to stage 1 hypertension, which is 130 to 139 or 80 to 89. So now the levels have come down. Once upon a time, we used to say more than 140 was stage 1 hypertension, and between 130 to 140 was pre-hypertension. But we have lowered this down because now we have enough studies to say that the blood pressure between 120 and 129 is better than blood pressure of 130 to 139. Okay. Now, so the new guidelines emphasize on blood pressure measurement. Now, we were discussing about how will you measure the blood pressure in what place. Now, a couple of things to remember, that the blood pressure taken in all these trials mostly, except the one which was a sprint trial, I'll come to that later on, but practically all blood pressures are taken in sitting position with the patient's arm rest at there, and he's not in an awkward position. As you all said, you wait for half an hour, then take the reading, and maybe take 3 readings, and then, so now 3 readings also initially we used to say at a gap of 5-10 minutes. But nowadays they say that you have electronic blood pressure equipments which are automatic, and every a gap of 2 minutes they take the blood pressure reading, 3 readings, and give you the average. 1. Mercury blood pressure manometers are practically given up in all the Western countries. All the trials are not based on mercury manometer. So whatever trials and results we are saying are all based on electronic. Aneroid blood pressure instruments also are not the preferred ones. It is good to get an idea, but the problem with all this mercury aneroid is the calibration. We generally do not calibrate this every 3 months or 6 months, and therefore it is very difficult to rely upon this reading. First of all, we don't have every service engineers to come and say that, okay, I will do this for you. You have to go and fetch out where that engineer is. So these two are a bit problematic. Therefore, that is one. Then secondly, you are measuring at your office blood pressure. So you may have a effect of white coat hypertension also. We will discuss that later on. Then the next point is most stringent blood pressure classification system, as I told you just now. a new approach to decision making has come in, especially which incorporates in the underlying cardiovascular risk. So you should know the risk profile of the patient also. Lower targets for blood pressure during the management of hypertension. Now we are targeting between 120 and 130, especially in the young patient. In the elderly above 75, 80, you may target around 130. Strategies to improve blood pressure control during treatment with an emphasis on lifestyle approaches. That also is very important, and we will come to that. Now, this is a slide which shows you different kinds of blood pressure which are supposed to be taken as the normal. Okay, so you should remember that a blood pressure of 120 by 80 in your clinic and in your home, in your home blood pressure monitoring 120 by 80, daytime 120, by night time it will be 100 by 65. So when you take nighttime blood pressures on ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, it will be low than what your daytime are. So on an average, the 24 ABPM, now 24 ABPM, you see, you will get different readings in that. One is an average reading of the 24 hours. This is what it reflects, 115 by 75. So this is definitely low than your clinic blood pressure monitoring. So the idea to tell you is that, and nowadays what we practice is, and as you all know, that the blood pressure equipments are now quite economical and cheap, within the range of a middle class person, around 2,000, 2,500 or 3,000, you get good BP instruments. And once you tell them, you have to convince them to buy a blood pressure instrument. And the way I tell them is that, see, if you want to control your blood pressure strictly, you better take one. And the home blood pressure readings are much more reliable than the clinic readings. Because, and that also they have possibility to take at various timings of the day, sometimes early morning as soon as they get up, or at 11 o'clock, or at 4 o'clock, or at night. So there are various timings at which they can take. The only timing which they cannot take is the sleeping blood pressure or the nighttime blood pressure, wherein the ambulatory blood pressure monitoring does help you to score over this. So all those patients with a severe or stage 2 hypertension or an hypertensive emergency, so all those patients, when you want a tight control, you should look for nighttime blood pressure monitoring, especially diabetic patients also, whether they have this nighttime low blood pressure or not, because it's definitely a marker of major events like an MI or like a renal problem. And then the early morning blood pressure monitoring is also very important, because the next day blood pressure early morning reading before the tablets are taken will tell you whether the blood pressure is adequately under control or not. So whether your blood pressure medicine is active against that morning blood pressure or not is also a very important reading which we are supposed to take. So these are the various blood pressure indices which we look after whenever we treat this patient. It is not a uniform blood pressure number which we look for, whether then we look upon whether it is home blood pressure or ABPM and so on. Okay. Now we go on to the blood pressure types which we have. So, and how do we differentiate that? So, as I said, normotensive, of course, will remain normotensive both at office or clinic or health or in a ABPM. As I said, again, if it is office, we will say, okay, less than 130 by 80. At nighttime, blood pressure would be 125 by 75. Or during the day, and at night would be around less than 120 or so. Now, sustained hypertension is one which you see blood pressure more in all the readings. A masked hypertension. Now, this is also a new terminology. Just as you have white coat hypertension, where the blood pressure reading is high when the patient is in the clinic, but the blood pressure reading is normal or lower than what you see in the clinic. So that is white coat. We all know that what is the effect of white coat. But if it is the reverse, that means in the clinic, the patient blood pressure reading are normal. But if you take the home blood pressure monitoring or an ABPM, then the readings are high. Now this kind of situation arises when there is stress at work or stress at home, something like that. So whether it is that, and what happens sometimes is when the patient comes to you, he feels relaxed, he or she may feel relaxed, and you make him wait or her wait for half an hour or 10-15 minutes, make him relax, and then the blood pressure reading may be normal, especially if the patient is well conversant, you are a family doctor, they discuss with you all their family problems also. So one may feel quite comfortable with you, and therefore there is masked hypertension. But at home or at office, where there is lot of stress, they might feel this, and therefore that blood pressure may be high, and which is known as masked hypertension. Suppose you have a patient who says that, sir, at particular time of the day I get headache, or I get giddiness, I feel breathless, or I feel palpitation. Some of these symptoms are there at a particular time, and you want to find out. You take his blood pressure in your office, it is normal. You say, oh my, this is normal. Then he says that, okay, but right now I don't have any headache. My problem is only at this time. That is a possibility that this could be masked hypertension. You should ask for either a ambulatory blood pressure monitoring reading or a reading at that particular time. If he's in the office and if they have the luxury or facilities like the services of Dr. Kishore Madhwani, then they can go to him and take the blood pressure reading and find out. So that is about this. Now, the question is, when would you order an ambulatory blood pressure monitoring? Okay. So, but there are various, and this is good to know, when would you like to have, and we were discussing about this. So, as we said, yes, white coat hypertension. So he comes to you repeatedly, the blood pressure readings are high, and he's totally asymptomatic. Now, whether to treat him or not, as we were discussing about that, this patient. So if you think that this is white coat hypertension, especially a patient who is coming to you for the first time, never in the past has he come, he doesn't have your experience or your expertise, he doesn't know much of that, he has come to you, and then, okay, so you tell him your 3 readings are high, now what should I do? So before you confirm and give him, and so especially now patients are quite educated with Dr. Google around everywhere, 24/7 available with them. So it is better to make them understand and say that, see, this could be white coat hypertension, you have no symptoms, so we have some time, get one ABPM reading done and sort out all the problems. So once if I start a treatment, then practically it is lifelong. So we would start that. And then for diabetic population, yes, diabetic population, we also have a theory that even if they don't have high blood pressure, you should give them cardioprotective drugs like Ramipril or Cardace, so that there is secondary prevention from them. You all know from the HOPE trial, diabetic population also benefit from ACE inhibitors like Ramipril, even if they don't have blood pressure. If they have mild hypertension, of course, this is an indication. Elderly women with isolated systolic hypertension. Okay, this is also one thing. People frequently ask this question. If the diastole is 70 or 80 and the systolic is 160, would you treat or not? Yes, it has to be treated. In fact, in the elderly population, it is a systolic blood pressure which is high. And in the younger population, it is diastole which is high. So if you have an elderly, especially a woman, you should look for isolated systolic hypertension. And of course, here, since we are talking of women, we should also include here pregnancy. This pre-eclampsia, eclampsia, you want a tight control, you want to know the readings at home, and therefore, there also you would like to get an ABPM done. So for apparent treatment resistance, we will discuss this. So many a times you see the blood pressure readings are still high despite your treatment, and you want to find out whether it is high just at your office or also at home. For anxiety prone patients, yes, this is also there. So what happens is sometimes they come to you, not only the blood pressure is high, but the pulse rate is also high. So you want to know whether what is the sleeping heart rate and a blood pressure, you like to get there. When marked fluctuation in office BP is seen, so this is known as variability. So this is visit to visit variability. Okay, so every visit the blood pressure fluctuates, and then you want to be sure before you step up on the dose. Now symptoms suggestive of hypotension. So sometimes you see your blood pressure at your place is 130, 140. As Dr. Muchandani was saying, you take a standing blood pressure, you take a lying down, find out the postural hypertension is there or not. You are not sure. Sometimes what happens when they come to the clinic, the blood pressures are fairly good. But once he takes the medicine in the morning and within half an hour, the blood pressure is very low, extremely low, especially if you give drugs like Prazopress or Minipress, all these severe vasodilators if you give, then the chances of postural hypotension are there. So you want to find out that, and then you can order a ABPM. And for nighttime dippers and non-dippers, so as I said, this concept is very important that diabetic population should have good dipping so that their vital organs like kidney and the heart are preserved, and you want to find out there. As I said, that morning blood pressure readings also you want as soon as they get up, how high do they go? Is there any sympathetic drive? Is the blood pressure controlled by your medicine or not? So now we come to the characteristics of the patient. We said 160 by more than 100 or 110. What's his age? Whether there is obesity? You should ask him history in the last 3-4 days or a last week. What did he have? Does he have excess alcohol? Does he have excess salt injection taken along with that? There is history of NSAIDs for any muscular pain or osteoarthritis or some sprain which he had, and whether he has taken this. So this you should act, whether there is history of any renal stones. Now when I say chronic kidney disease, what happens is I'm not looking for a creatinine of 2 or 2.5 all of a sudden manifesting unless he's a diabetic and asymptomatic, not taking treatment and uncontrolled diabetes. But in practice, I see the history which you should ask in young age people is whether there is history of renal stone. So many a times what happens is that these patients undergo ureterolithotomy and all sorts of kidney stones operations, or they are on medical management. You have mild hydronephrosis, you don't know, or whether the kidney is damaged because of past history of stones and urinary infections or pyelonephritis. They also don't remember if it is 10, 15 years old. And then you have to make a leading question and find out whether there is history of stones or not. Diabetes, of course, you all know. Lifestyle, as we were discussing, obesity, high salt, physical inactivity, ingestion, whether they are on a healthy diet or not, and heavy alcohol ingestion, especially weekend alcohol, binge alcohol, as we say. Binge alcohol is more dangerous than regular alcohol. So what happens is there is a long weekend and people go on binge alcohol Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But generally it is a weekend, and on Monday when they come to you, you will find that their blood pressures are quite high. Maybe they are borderline hypertensive, already having 140, 100. And then all of a sudden these 3-4 days of all these nuts and dry fruits and salty foods along with binges of alcohol, they can precipitate this kind of situation. So of course now this is the other causes, as we said, whether the blood pressure instrument is proper or not, and white coat hypertension. So we discussed this, and then is of course evaluation. One sec. I'm in a session. Yeah, so, okay. Now, I was telling you that you should also ask history about whether the patient was taking any NSAIDs, COX-2 inhibitors for various regions, or decongestant, some dietary pills also. They also have this kind of, somebody was saying about thyroid also. You see, thyroid per se, hypothyroidism, yes, can lead to hypertension, but there should be something associated to give 160 by 110. And one has to be careful about that. So, or steroids, steroids is another drug which gives rise to a rise in blood pressure readings. So, alcohol, oral pills, yes, in younger population, younger age, oral pills. Now, see, frequent cause of hypertension in a young age I have seen is these patients going for IVF. When they go for that is in vitro fertilization, IVF, when they go for this and they are taking these cycles, they are given heavy steroids, that is this estrogen progesterone pills, and in high dosage they are given. The increased weight, the blood pressure goes haywire, and then they are referred to us whether they should conceive or not. So this also is a history which you should take in ladies. Cyclosporin, erythropoietin, those drugs, immunosuppressant drugs, if they are taking for some reason or the other, erythropoietin, natural licorice, herbal compounds. Now, herbal compounds also is a history which you should ask, because we do not know what the contents are, and sometimes they may have steroids also, and they may have drugs which can increase the blood pressure. Okay, so then the other thing which you have is OSA. OSA is also one of the causes which raises the blood pressure. So if you have an obese 55-year-old executive, you ask for history of snoring or not and find out, and especially if this is snoring, alcohol weekend, all this gives rise to a high blood pressure very early. Of course, renal parenchymal disease. So I was asking somebody about, will you ask only for creatinine and urine examination or not? So now I'll tell the reason why I was inquiring is, of course, patient should afford, but patient should afford 150 rupees for serum electrolytes. Now, how do you diagnose aldosteronism? So this is what it is. You know, just looking at the serum urea, creatinine, and urine examination should not be satisfactory. You should also ask for serum electrolytes, that is including serum potassium. Hypokalemia would be the first way to think, just raise a doubt about aldosteronism. So now there could be rare situations where the potassium is normal and still the patient has aldosteronism, but those situations are uncommon. But if you have a patient whose potassium is quite low, 2.5, 2.2, 2.8, he is hypertensive, creatinine normal, renal parenchymal, I mean, you will say KUB is normal, but you should suspect primary aldosteronism, and maybe you should do either this nuclear scan test to find out, or an MRI to find out adrenal glands and so on. Renal artery stenosis, of course, you look by renal Doppler and try to detect that. So now we come to the treatment. How would you treat this patient? And we had different opinions on this. How would we treat these patients? So yes, if the patient has symptoms, and as doctor was suggesting that she had a patient 160 he landed up in a stroke, and somebody said he landed up in a failure. So the history is very important of the patient. What are his symptoms? Is he really asymptomatic? But you have to be provocative in asking the question. Just the patient, नहीं कुछ नहीं होता है, मुझे कोई problem नहीं है. And then you should ask him, कितना staircase है आपके घर पे? Do you climb the railway bridge? Do you climb the staircase? How many flights do you get breathless at that time? Do you have episodes of headache or not? Or do you feel giddy or dizzy sometimes? All these provocative questions have to be asked, and then try to find out whether he's really symptomatic or not, whether there is past history of stroke or a TIA-like picture or an angina-like picture. And if you are very good at clinical, you should also test the blood pressure in the lower limbs and find out whether there is any evidence of mismatch. So ankle brachial index is poor, and then there is peripheral vascular disease. Or if you see that the upper blood pressure readings are very high and the lower blood pressure, the lower limbs are quite low, so whether there is any evidence of coarctation of aorta or something like that, all those factors should be done and seen. I'll call you in 5-10 minutes. So this is what all you have to see, and then decide what treatment you want to give. Now, if he is a young patient, say, as I said, around 50, 55, you have choices. Now, as I said, again, if you want to start an ACE or ARB, this is, I'm talking about an asymptomatic patient. So I'm not talking of a patient who may be in failure, he has come, or he has breathlessness, you have auscultated crepitations are there, or he has leg edema without any amlodipine being taken. You want to give Lasix, that is fine. You want to give. Now, sublingual nifedipine is a drug which we give as an emergency for patients. The only problem with sublingual nifedipine is that in case he has coronary artery disease which is obstructive, he may land up in problem. Or if he has carotid artery stenosis, there is relative ischemia at the distal side because of vasodilatation. So you have to be careful about that. Nowadays, we do not use that unless we are sure that there is no obstructive atherosclerotic disease either in the head or in the brain, of course. And then if you are sure of that, and if you think clinically it's not there and you still want to bring a blood pressure down, you can give that. But you should not bring down aggressively the blood pressure if you are suspecting a stroke. Because if you are suspecting a stroke, the blood pressure might drop down, but the stroke will get progressive. So it is better that if you are suspecting a stroke or an angina-like picture, don't give nifedipine and bring down the blood pressure drastically down. Okay, having said that, then we said about this. Then there was a comment about amlodipine being given 10 milligram or so. Okay, so now the maximum dose of amlodipine is 10 milligram, right? But should not be given the second time. And see, amlodipine is an oral drug. It will take about half an hour, 1 hour at least to initiate action. So you'll have to observe the patient in your office or clinic, and then take a repeat blood pressure. That is fine. But the faster way of action is to give a diuretic. Now, the most safest amongst that would be an amlodipine drug. You don't know the urea creatinine or the potassium level, so giving ACE ARB may not be the ideal choice in that case. You do about diuretic, you are giving in a clinic where you are sitting in a place where you don't have immediate toilet facilities, and the patient even before going home might have to go to the bathroom twice or thrice. So all these practical things have to be taken into mind before you give diuretic also. So in that sense, yes, I agree, amlodipine is a good choice. But if you are thinking of long term now, what would you choose between ACE ARB versus CCB versus beta blocker and a single pill combination, as somebody was suggesting, Dr. Mulchandani, that I would like to give a combination. Let me see now. Yes. So as I said now, the target is less than 130 by 80. It is not 140 by 90. Please remember. You will also advise lifestyle modification measures. But please remember, this is all standard guideline treatment, right? This is good that you should see that you instruct the patient to go for lifestyle management thing. But the problem with us is that most of our population would say, sir, I cannot go for walking daily, or I have no time, and then there is no open spaces to go nearby. Yes, I can cut down my alcohol intake, salt intake. You talk of weight reduction, they will say no, that they will agree, but you will not see drastic changes, and you will lose 3-6 months in that. If the patient is borderline hypertensive or stage 1, I would say, okay, let us give a trial. But if he is 160, 100 and above and something like that, then I would say better start with some treatment. I would put it like this. You start all this lifestyle modification, take this tablet, let the blood pressure come down to normal. If you think that he's too anxious, you may start with a sedative, or you may start with a tranquilizer. Also, if you think that his hypersympathetic activity, pulse rate is fast, along with that, you may start with a beta blocker, although beta blocker is not advised as a first line of treatment unless there is a compelling indication. So like if he has history of angina or heart failure and so on. But otherwise, we prefer to give him an ACE, we prefer to give a CCB. These two drugs, if the age is more than 55, CCB is preferred. If the age is less than 50, 55, ACE inhibitor is preferred. And only if the patient is not tolerant to ACE inhibitors, then you give an ARB. This is the standard recommendation. The problem with ACE inhibitors, besides the side effect of cough, is that we don't have potent drugs of ACE inhibitors. Cardace is there 10 milligram. It's good for mild hypertension. And then we have perindopril, which is good for 8 milligram. That also can be good. And then you have lisinopril, which we used to use in olden days, difficult to get now. So we don't have such potent drugs as ACE inhibitors for a 24-hour single pill effect. But now we have good combinations in perindopril, which can take care along with the calcium channel blocker and diuretics and all that. So now the next thing is that if you have a blood pressure of 160/100, then you should, if at all you decide to start, say you have given all these trials and the blood pressure still remains high, then you straight away start with a 2-drug combination. Now, what are the combinations? These are the various guidelines, the British guidelines, the European guidelines, and the JNC 8. So all these guidelines are there. We don't have this problem of black population. So let us concentrate here. Either you give ACE-ARB plus CCB combination, or you give ACE-ARB plus diuretic combination. Now here again, you have to see whether the patient has more of salt intake, his sodium intake is high. You want to get a small diuretic action so that the sodium is out of the system. He's a 55-year-old gentleman. So I would say, okay, ACE-ARB plus diuretic in that situation. Or if he doesn't have that kind of thing, then okay, ACE-ARB with CCB. And then you educate the patient about the side effects of these drugs like ACE for cough, CCB for pedal edema, and then you start the treatment. So this would be one. And in case if it doesn't get controlled with this, you have combinations of ARBs, CCBs, or ACE, CCB and diuretic, or ARB, CCB and diuretics. Now, as far as monotherapy drug for this 160/100, 110 would considered, then you have to give potent drugs which will take care of the blood pressure. Now, amongst all that potent drugs, if you see here, I will say that either olmesartan or azilsartan. Of course, azilsartan has got an advantage that it has 36 hours action. So the next day morning blood pressure is taken care of. And plus it's a very good effective dose, especially if you combine with that chlorthalidone. So combination of azilsartan and chlorthalidone, if a diuretic you want to add, would be a good drug. First you start only with azilsartan, single drug dose, and then you may increase it to 40 milligram, or you can give a combination of 20 plus chlorthalidone. Unfortunately, azilsartan with CCB is not available. Olmesartan with CCB is available. Olmesartan with diuretic is available for such a high blood pressure with a single pill dose. If the blood pressure is stage 1 hypertension, then I would say, okay, you can give this. Now, perindopril 8 milligram plus 5 milligram of amlodipine plus a diuretic like indapamide is now available. A triple drug combination is now available. So a single drug with perindopril, amlodipine, or perindopril, indapamide, or 1 plus 2 plus 3, all three, these are available. So one can choose if the patient tolerates, and he should tolerate at least 75% of the times. So that also is a good combination you can start with. Of course, you have cilnidipine, benidipine, efenodipine. The only problem with these drugs as on today is that there is no long-term data available. The only long-term data available is with amlodipine. That is the best drug in the CCB. Diltiazem has certain trials with that, but there is no long-term mortality benefit seen in those trials. Therefore, we don't. Nifedipine retard, yes, but this specially is a molecule for CKD patients. We give this 60 milligram, 20 to 40 or 60 milligram, we give nifedipine. We prefer to give that tablet over there. About telmisartan also, we have many combinations in telmisartan available. So that also is a combination which you can give. Telmisartan with chlorthalidone, or telmisartan with amlodipine, and telmisartan triple drug also is available. So all these combinations are available both in single and combination. So these are the various combinations we discussed just now. As far as somebody said about hydrochlorothiazide, Now, see, the problem with hydrochlorothiazide is that we don't consider that as an antihypertensive drug. Okay. Now, when we say this chlorthalidone and indapamide, they have long action, 24, 36 hours action. And they initially act as a diuretic in treatment of hypertension. But later on, after 3-4 weeks, this action is not the prominent action. The prominent action is a vasodilatory action. So you have to remember, we are using it on long-term basis more for vasodilatory rather than for a diuretic action. So that is it about hydrochlorothiazide, and therefore these hydrochlorothiazide combinations are not in vogue nowadays. We prefer one of these two as a diuretic. So of course I covered all this. Now yes, this is a slide to show that two drugs are 5-fold more effective than one. So a fixed dose combination is definitely preferred, and wherein two drugs are gone and the blood pressure reduction is much more. So these are just the benefits of fixed dose combination. You have convenience and compliance, less of side effect, low cost, and a better effect. Now, less of side effect, what do we mean by that? So does it mean that if you have one single dose, the side effect is more than when you have two drug combination? In hypertension treatment, it is true if you have the ideal combination. Say for example, amlodipine gives rise to edema. And if you add an ACE inhibitor or an ARB to that, that edema can be counteracted. So because amlodipine acts, so because of the effect both on efferent and afferent, so that is counteracted and the pedal edema is less with such a combination. So such synergistic combination treatments are also there, and of course it comes to low cost, so you don't have to pay individually the cost of two drugs. And the downside of a 2-tablet treatment is more side effect, need more hypertensive, less of compliance, and patient has to remember. So this is azelasertan and chlorthalidone combination, which has been approved by the FDA over here also, and it is available as 20 or 40 plus 6.25. And this is the, of course, the again, as I said, that when you give this combination, you have both vasodilation, initially, as I said, diuretic action, and this adds to an additive action and increased BP lowering efficacy. Especially if you have this population which is around 60, they have some pedal edema also, and there they can benefit. So with this, what we will do is, okay, this is another lecture by itself. We will definitely go on for discussion, and I hope we have time, another at least 15 minutes do we have for discussion, Mr. Milind?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now can we go back to the participant list and
Yeah. I'll just...
and then we raise our hand and we take questions or comments from all our participants. Okay, so anybody has to comment, ask, or give opinion, or some points which I have missed, I am not sure, but
Sir, Dr. Mulchandani.
Yes, sir, tell me.
Can we start with either ACE or ARB, add calcium channel blocker, add diuretic? This is my take. Now, how will you treat?
Okay, so if I definitely, as I said, I would like to take the history of the patient, find out certain factors. But yes, in the first go, I would like to give him some kind of treatment just to keep the blood pressure under stage 1 hypertension. So we do not land up in any, just a second, I have an ICU call. Yes, tell me. Yes, madam. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Yeah. after breakfast. Okay. Okay. Rest I'll give you instruction on the app. Yeah. So sorry. So yes, I would give him some. Now, depending upon his profile, I would say that I would give him either ACE or ARB or a calcium channel blocker, and find out if he is a more obese patient. I would prefer to give him an ACE or an ARB. If he's, as I said, it is 160 by 100, I would start him with an ARB, like a long-acting ARB. Small dose, 20 milligram azilsartan is good enough, or an olmesartan 20 milligram is good enough. Then get all his other parameters done in the meantime. If he comes in my clinic, of course, you all know I have all the diagnostic facilities. So I get the blood and echo and ECG, everything in one go, and assess what's his status. But if I'm not sure, then I would say, okay, you start with an amlodipine of 5 milligram, take this, and then in couple of days time, we will try and evaluate you and then decide what is the strategy. So, but I would not go with a triple drug combination immediately. That I would say that going triple drug combination would not be advisable unless the patient is already on a single drug or a dual drug is not under control, and then that's a different story altogether. But that's my take. Yes, but the drugs of choice would be ACRB or CCB, and diuretic. Yes, a low dose diuretic, if at all, as a first line. Patient has got pedal edema, some kind of breathlessness is there, or a history, past history of something, then in that case, low dose of diuretic also as a single drug I would add till the investigations are available and I get a second or the third reading which is high, then I would go on to a dual drug.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, there are few questions. Dr. Kamlesh K. Zariwala has asked,
yes.
do giving two drugs separately work better than a fixed dose combination?
Okay, so the question is, do two drugs separately given works better than a fixed dose combination? See, by studies we have shown that a fixed dose drug combination acts better than or is more effective in long-term compliance besides the cost factor and all that. But those should be at the dose which you want to give to the patient. It should not happen that the dose, I'll tell you example. Now, azilsartan 40 and 12.5 is still not available if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Millen, is it true? Azilsartan 40 plus 12.5, is it available now?
Yeah, now it is available. Now
it is available. It was not initially, okay, when they introduced the molecule, it was not. So we had to give a separate combination, but now it is available, as they say. So if you have a fixed dose combination which is available, then you give that. But if it is not available and you still want to give it separately, then you will have to give it separately. Now, when you give it separately, then I would prefer that you give one in the morning and one in the evening to take care of the next day early morning blood pressure. That would be an ideal thing, if at all. But the only problem is the compliance. You know, the patients might forget, then they say, okay, I came late and I forgot, or they say, I got up late in a hurry, I forgot, and so on. So normally I tell my patients that you decide your timing. When is the timing when you can remember to take your tablet? So if it is a fixed dose, long-acting tablet, it is immaterial whether it takes morning or evening. But if it is a short-acting tablet, then it will make a difference. So that is one question. Now we traditionally thought that all the blood pressure medicine should be taken in the morning. But now there are studies also that blood pressure tablet taken in the evening also is as effective as taken in the morning, provided the blood pressure remains under control for 24 hours. So now if you have a long-acting tablet, you can take it in the evening also. So this is, I would say that previously a lot of these combinations were not available in fixed dose. Nowadays you have a wide range, and practically by and large we can fit in most of the times. Unless, as I said, yes, there are times when I want to give, let us say, 10 milligram of ramipril and 10 milligram of amlodipine. that combination is not available. It is available as 5 plus 5. So that is the problem. But 10 plus 5 is not available. So there are certain things which are not available.
Yes. Sir, there is one more question. Dr. Ramesh Katoj, do we need to reduce blood pressure urgently in this case?
Immediately give him, unless there are symptoms and it is a compelling indication to give a diuretic or reduce the blood pressure immediately, or he has angina, or he is in failure. So some sort of, or if he's TIA also or a stroke impending, I would not reduce the blood pressure. But yes, if he's angina or if he, then I would give nitroglycerin, or if he has failure, then you would give, but otherwise not. But I would add a mild hypertensive at least to see that he doesn't land up in a complication. A safe antihypertensive I would prefer. Okay, I see some questions here. Best beta blocker for a young patient with hypertension with tachycardia. So as I said, that beta blockers generally by all these guidelines have not been preferred, but which my personal opinion is that they should have been included in the guidelines. Now, why beta blocker got a bad name? It was because of atenolol. Atenolol, most of them used to give them single once a day, and therefore the blood pressure reduction was not total 24 hours, and therefore there were more events, more cardiac events or complications in that subgroup. So then they said that no, if there is no such compelling indication like angina or ischemic heart disease or a history of cardiac failure, or there is increased sympathetic activity like tachycardia, then only in those cases we will allow them to use. So, and in our population or our patients, many a times we find this situation where the patient has got hypertension and tachycardia. So yes, beta blocker should be used in that situation, and the best beta blocker with which has got evidence is either metoprolol sustained release or bisoprolol long acting is also good. Now you have newer like nebivolol, which is both a vasodilator, so especially it is good for elderly population where the claudication or the peripheral vascular disease side effects are less, or asthma is less. You have COPD patient, you prefer nebivolol for this, or at the most labetalol also is one drug which has got vasodilatory action and is not selective like the metoprolol sustained release. So you can use that in that situation. So these are the four I would say which are standard. But if he is like migraine along with that, then propranolol long acting would be another drug of choice. Major CV events, let us see, reduction in the morning. So can I give beta blocker at night? Okay. So now if you give beta blocker at night, then it should be long acting because it cannot be short acting beta blocker. If you give, say for example, beta lock plain, then it is a short acting. If you give sustained release preparations, then yes, that would be beneficial to get the morning blood pressure down. Or if you use bisoprolol, then of course it's a long-acting drug. If you use nebivolol, that also is a long-acting drug. So whether you give in the morning or evening, it should be effective for the next day morning. So isolated blood pressure best drug. So if you have isolated systolic hypertension, then what would be the best drug? I can 10 minutes में phone करता हूँ. So what would be the best drug of choice? So this is also a very frequently asked question because you have 160, 170 blood pressure and you have a diastolic blood pressure of 70. What would you do? If you bring down drastically the systolic blood pressure, the diastole may go below 60. And there is a theory that if you go below the 60, then there could be complication or a J-shaped phenomenon as we call. So now you have to remember that more important is the mean blood pressure, okay, is the mean blood pressure, not the pure diastolic. So if the mean If the diastole is, let us say, 60 and the systolic is 150, the mean blood pressure is still above the 60 required for renal perfusion and other organs. So that should be acceptable. So you should not worry about that. Now, what would be the drug? Generally, this is found in elderly population. Amlodipine is a good drug of choice for these patients. If not, then if you can add a diuretic, that is also a second good drug of choice for this patient. And you can add an ARB or an ACE later on if despite this you can't control the blood pressure. So that would be my take on that. Abroad, are fixed dose combination available? Yes, they are available. Definitely they are available, and some of the drugs are fixed dose combination are very well available, which are not over here. I can give you a classic example that which I have been suggesting to these pharma people also, that olmesartan we have 40 plus amlodipine 5 milligram we have, and we have a chlorthalidone or a hydrochlorothiazide, but hydrochlorothiazide in 12.5 and chlorthalidone is 6.25. Okay, abroad you have 40 milligram of olmesartan and 10 milligram of amlodipine instead of 5 milligram of amlodipine, and instead of 12.5 of hydrochlorothiazide you have 25 milligram. So a single tablet of 40 plus 10 plus 25 is good enough for any blood pressure of 180 by 110. But that is not available here. So I have to give double drugs. See, the most of the patients who are sent to me are those drugs are patients who are not controlled by their physicians, and or maybe they know about this. Many a times they know about the combinations or the treatment to be given, but that the patient may not listen to them or may not adhere to their advice. So they say, okay, you better go to a consultant and then get the treatment prescribed from them. So that's why many times they are referred, and I would wish to have such kind of potent combination to give a single drug therapy. Any drug to be avoided in elderly for the fear of postural hypotension? I gave you a classic example of this Presopress or Minipress, Prezosine hydrochloride, those drugs. There are centrally acting drugs also, like this Arcamin type of drugs. They also can give you that. Previously, we used to have hydralazine as also one of the combinations to beta blocker and diuretics. It's not available now, but now you have hydralazine available either separately, which is a vasodilator and can also cause hypotension, but we have fixed dose combination with nitrates in the treatment of heart failure if the patient cannot tolerate ACE or ARB. So those drugs also can give rise to this kind of postural hypotension. If early morning BP is 180 by 110 and afternoon BP is 130 by 70 without any medication, how do I explain it? Without any medication to get such a big drop is difficult, I would say. Yes, the morning surge could amount to about 10 or 20 millimeters, but not 50 millimeters as is shown in this case. This could be an effect of some of the drugs which the patient is taking and which he is not telling you that I am on such and such drug, because sometimes patients want to hide the medications which they are taking when they come to you for various reasons. You know, they want to either test you also, sometimes they want to test. There are patients who come to me and with classical symptoms of angina, I tell them angiography, they get the angiography done, and after the angiography is done, then they tell me, sir, मेरे पास एक पुराना CD भी है, so I want to compare, इसमें कुछ फायदा हुआ है, मैं किधर वो लोनाला के उसमें गया, इधर गया, उसका मैं आयुर्वेदिक ट्रीटमेंट लिया, सब लोग बोला इससे ब्लॉकेज कम हो जाएगा, इसलिए मेरे को टेस्ट करने का था, मेरा ब्लॉकेज कम हो गया कि नहीं. So you get all sorts of these patients and they want to hide treatment, but you should strongly suspect. Sometimes it may happen that they don't know that this is an antihypertensive treatment. Suppose if he has gone thinking that he is taking some Ayurvedic tablet or he is taking some other therapy tablet, he may not know that this is also. Or else sometimes it may so happen that he is taking a vitamin, so-called vitamin tablet, but by mistake the chemist has given him an antihypertensive tablet. We don't know. So all this is investigational, and you should try and find out or you should give him an ambulatory blood pressure monitoring to truly find out whether it is so. So Dr. Kamlesh Jariwala is asking, can drugs with once a day dosage be split into morning and evening dose, and advantages if any? So if I understand his question correctly, what he wants to say is drugs which are given once a day, say for example, Azilsartan is given once a day. So can we give it half morning and half evening? That's his question. I don't think that it will, I mean, I don't think there's a special advantage to this. Okay. And maybe your compliance may, I don't know why the patient would like to have twice a day. Most of the patients would, and I prefer even in my prescriptions. In fact, many patients I get referred by my other patients or by my colleague doctors that, sir, he is one man who will give you 3-4 tablets once a day. And I prefer that my patients forget that they have some disease or not. So I would prefer once a day. If he still wants to take, as I said, if you are giving him 2 separate drugs, then one morning, one evening I would. But if you are taking a long-acting drug like Azilsartan or Olmesartan, especially Azilsartan, once a day is quite sufficient. One, it takes care of 36 hours, which means what? If he forgets the next day, the blood pressure reduction activity is still there. That's the biggest advantage. And I'll tell you, I go to the extent that some of my patients who have borderline creatinine, say for example, the creatinine is 1.87, the potassium is 5.2, and you have a fear that the potassium will go up if you give an ARB, I give them alternate day Azilsartan. Alternate day Azilsartan to avoid any hyperkalemia and still get the benefit of blood pressure. So these are some of the tricks you do in practice. Any connection between an ACE inhibitor and CL lung? Of course, this is a theoretical question. There are papers on this, but there is no proven in human beings. Some rats or some rodents, something has been proven. But I don't think there are any studies in human beings about that. I have purchased a wristwatch ambulatory blood pressure monitoring device for my patients from Singapore. And BP Pro. It works very well for dosage adjustment and also white coat hypertension. It costs 60,000 INR. Well, there are studies, and in future you will have many more such wrist blood pressure. But the only problem is they have to be validated. So the guideline should validate your BP instrument. Even in the electronic blood pressure instruments, you have to see that there is a stamp of either a European CE standard or the American standard guidelines approval is there or not. And that you can check if you go on the Google. You take that batch, whichever you have purchased, go on the Google and find out whether they are validated or endorsed by some of these guidelines, especially the European and the American. Okay, half-life of Azilsartan, 12 to 24 hours almost, I would say 12 to 14 hours at least. So therefore we say that it is 12 to 18, sorry. Therefore we say 36 hours. Okay, this is validated. Yes, good. If it is validated, your patient can afford 60,000, no problem at all. If he can afford an iPhone of 1 lakh, why not 60,000 for a blood pressure equipment? Agreed. Glycemic variability also brings about surge in blood pressure. Very nice. Yes, it does. So as I said, that variability, visit to visit variability, intraday variability, all these things are known. And especially with glycemic variability, you will find that the blood pressure sometimes, as you say, is resistant, so-called pseudo-resistance. The blood pressure, the sugar is uncontrolled. You bring down the sugars, control the sugars, and the blood pressure comes under control with the same medicine. So definitely, glycemic variability does make the blood pressure variable, and there will be surges also. So as soon as you control that, this will also come down. Anything further? Can you see now, sir? I think
no more questions. I think
no.
everything, sir, you
Now,
covered and answered.
anybody else wants to comment, suggest?
Hello.
Yes,
so
tell
myself
me.
is Dr. Kothari.
Bolo, sir.
I have done angioplasty 3 times, but my BP is 110, 120 by 80. I have taken metoprolol 25 milligram, telmisartan 40 milligram daily. Doctor said that your cardiac and kidney safety for your cardiac. Then what can I do now?
No, so right. So from what I hear, you have undergone angioplasty. I think I did couple of times angioplasty for you, and last 5-10 years you are okay. And now when we have done it, see, you have to remember that when we have done a procedure, either angioplasty, bypass procedure, or if you have history of cardiac failure, the idea is not to control the blood pressure to 120 or 130. The idea is to bring the blood pressure down to a tolerable level and give you the benefit of cardioprotection. Say, for example, ACE inhibitors are known to be protective even in secondary prevention, that is all those post-plasty or post-procedure. A post-MI or a post-heart failure or a post-event patients. So we try to add that also in whatever dose, low dose, moderate dose, but we try to give all this combination together. If there is history of heart failure, we give them aldactone also. So all that is given to get the maximum benefit. If the blood pressure tolerance is not there, we give them half the dose or whatever minimum dose. But polytherapy is very important for all these secondary prevention patients. So I think if your blood pressure is remaining 100, 110, it is very ideal. You are tolerating it, you are doing your exercise, and you don't have any pains, you are tolerating well. If the blood pressure, if the pulse rate is high, despite this treatment or despite everything, then I would like to add a beta blocker. If the blood pressure is like 100, then I would like to add ivabradine just to control the heart rate, because heart rate control also is an important factor both in blood pressure and reducing events long term.
My heart rate is normal, so I can regulate this medicine regularly taken.
Yes, yes, you have to continue that for long term benefit.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, yeah, please. Who is this?
Yeah, good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Smita here. The question which was asked, that early morning BP of 180 and 110, actually that is by personal, it is happening with me only. In this case, the patient is myself.
Okay.
And I'm not taking anything, and it is happening that early morning it's always in 170, 180, on the diastolic is 100 and 110. But as the day passes, around 10:30, it becomes 130, 70 till night at 10:30, and again from 11 night it starts rising.
So, madam, first of all, get an ABPM done. Best thing is get an ABPM done, get the 24-hour blood pressure readings. That would be an ideal thing for you to get that. And you'll have to check why do you have such kind of blood pressure fluctuations. Why do you have that kind of fluctuation? So I think first and foremost, I'll advise you to get an ABPM done.
Any particular other investigation to be done, sir?
No, I don't think so.
I don't have any symptom, not even headache or nothing.
Yeah. No, but if it is genuinely so, I would like to control the blood pressure surge. You should check your pulse rate. Your pulse rate should be 60 to 70. If that is remaining high, then I would give you a long-acting beta blocker.
Pulse rate is 80 like that. Between 70, 80.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So definitely we would treat some way or the other if the readings are correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, in case of this hypertensive crisis, Cardace 12.5 mg sublingual is better than Depin. What do you feel, sir?
If there is an hypertensive emergency, you said Cardace or what?
Yeah, Cardace 12.5 mg sublingually, sir.
No, sir, sublingually you have you don't have Cardace sublingually. You can give enalapril sublingually. In olden days, we used to have captopril. ACE inhibitors can be given sublingually. That I accept. As you said, you can give IV diuretic also. You can give sulfated. You can give Depin also. But please rule out that
Depin can cause ischemia, sir.
Pardon?
Depin can cause ischemia.
Yeah, so that's why I was saying that you should try and rule out that the patient doesn't, at least from clinically history, obviously he should not have coronary artery disease or a stroke problem.
Okay, okay.
But if he's totally asymptomatic, I would say you give him amlodipine and make him wait.
Yeah, you said on it. Thank you, sir.
So anybody else? So I have a different session at 6 o'clock. So if you excuse me now, I think I would like to thank everybody to participate
Thank
in
you, sir.
this
Thank you so much.
and actively participate in the session and give your, and you have given your views, opinions. We will be definitely more enriched with all this discussion we had.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very
sir.
much. Thank you all of you.
Thank you.
Excellent
Thanks a lot.
lecture,
Thank
excellent
you.
information, very informative.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Thanks, Dr. Pankaj Mehta. Thanks,
Yeah.
Dr. Mulchandani and Kishore and everybody. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.
What I know your fever is going on, I would suggest you buy a pulse oximeter.